The Passionate Leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back equipment in here. We got an I-beam gone to a firefighter.
Get that island urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins.
Ask yourself, if a citizen calls 911 because their child can't breathe, their spouse is having a heart attack, or their parent just collapsed, does it really matter whether we consider that a fire call or an EMS call? If EMS makes up the majority of what our departments do, why do parts of our culture still treat it like it's somehow less important than the emergencies we hope to run? And if firefighters continue to burn out, leave the profession, or struggle to find purpose, is it possible that we've spent too much time protecting the identity of the fire service and that we've resisted accepting what modern fire service has actually become? Because today we're going to talk about EMS, identity, burnout, recruitment, reality, and whether we've confused personal preferences with professional responsibility. Before we get into it, we do have to discuss our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to us by the First Due Project and the Fire and Foliage Symposium, happening October 16th and 17th in Nashua, New Hampshire. Born out of the belief that too many conferences have become about attendance numbers, social media posts, and packed schedules, at Fire and Foliage, you're not a number, you're a firefighter, an officer, a mentor, or someone simply trying to become better than you were yesterday. With the First Due Project, we believe every firefighter deserves the opportunity to grow, regardless of rank, title, and more importantly, budget. That's why we're committed to affordable education, meaningful conversations, and creating an experience where people actually connect instead of just passing through. If that sounds like the kind of environment you're looking for, visit us at firstdueproject.org for tickets, and we'll see you in October. Let's get right to it. This is part 2 of our Ask Yourself series. We're going to discuss the EMS identity. It's something that we all hit on hard. We all hope for the fire calls versus the cardiac arrest calls. But we really need to be realistic with ourselves and understand that that is not the modern fire service. That is not going to be the future of the fire service. The future of the fire service is in the medical field. It hurts to say, I know I didn't join the fire service to become an EMT, a medic, an AEMT, whatever fancy titles we want to put on it, but it is something that is extremely important in the fire service. So truthfully speaking, the quicker that we can stop complaining about it and accepting it, maybe the higher level of quality that we can give of service to our citizens. Fact be told, between 63 and 65% of all American fire departments out there are EMS and fire-based services. Why? Because it works. You already have the staff on site. You already have people to be there. Why can't they handle both calls? In fact, towns that do not have a combined service are really not doing a financial service to their communities. And it's something that people probably should really consider being a benefit or a loss of a benefit for their members. But there are some scary stats that go behind this, right? First, let's hit the highlights. The reasons that people join, right? We want to help people. I know that's why I joined the fire service. I wanted to help people, so I joined. I became a fire explorer at 16, and I have been in it since then, and I love the fire service. I love everything that we do, everything that the fire service embodies, and why we are there is to help people. And that's one of the reasons people become EMTs. They want to help people. Some people honestly have joined. The reports have showed that they've joined because they like the action-packed days. Now, this is commonly, a double-edged sword, right? We like our action-packed days, right? But we need to really consider the fact that maybe an action-packed day is what's causing our burnout. And we're going to talk about burnout here in a little bit. But our action-packed days do make the day go by pretty quick. The problem being is if you have an action-packed 24 or a 48-hour shift, you're getting your backside handed to you. And it's not really a fun time. There's a fast training. There is a lot to be said about in some worlds, you need to have a bachelor's or a master's degree. The fire service is working its way there. But in the medical side of the house, it's a shorter learning experience to get your EMT. EMT can be 6 to 8 months roughly to get your EMT, longer for your medic. I believe medic is a couple of years. But you're still already in the medical field doing things, getting your experience and your exposure. Another reason people want to join into the medical field is there's job security. Everybody's always going to fall out of their bed, bump their head, have that scrape or that ingrown toenail that they're going to need attended to. So we're always going to have the need for EMTs. Yes, cities and communities might have to downgrade and cut people out, blackout or brown out, houses, downgrade houses for, budgetary reasons. I understand that. But generally speaking, it's a pretty safe field to get you know, in the EMS side of the world. And probably one of the more important ones that I didn't really think of is that it is a very quick career path, a stepping stone, if you will, to other jobs. A lot of people want to become doctors, nurses. There is a way to challenge certain things in certain states with different levels of medical field training. If you're a paramedic, you can challenge, become a nurse, or whatever the case might be. And there's a lot to be said about that. You're kind of killing two birds with one stone. So it becomes a stepping stone process. But here's where we have ourselves a little bit of a problem. Because it's a stepping stone, because people use it the way that they are, we have very, very short lifespan of EMTs. And right now, statistics are showing it's between a 3.5 or 3.5 to a 5-year career expectancy plan. That doesn't sound like very much because it isn't. 3 to 5 years is not a very long time for somebody to want to be in there. Now, what's causing that? Again, like we talked about, it's a pathway to other jobs. So we have the concepts of, becoming an EMT, working my way into the field, and then I leave to become a doctor or a nurse or a field specialist, whatever the case is. And that's fine. That's a way to get into it. Sometimes people join the EMS side of the world to get into the fire side, and they find a way to get onto the big shiny red fire trucks and not have to look back into becoming, back on the ambulance and helping people with, medical emergencies and things like that. And that's also acceptable. But we have to realize that our career lengths, so to speak, on a recent search, average between 3.5 to 5 years total. So we're not really getting a lot of time out of our EMTs. Other things that are causing that, let's be very honest, could be burnout, right? Chronic sleep loss and fatigue. Again, back to the double-edged sword, like I said earlier, people want to have action-packed days. That's cool if you have an 8-hour shift. But if you're stuck working a 24 or a 48-hour schedule, even longer, and you have very little reprieve in between your calls, you're going to burn out very fast. Things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to get made. And it just doesn't end very well, right? It causes anxiety within the EMTs. It causes other added stress. You get home, you can't really settle down because you're still stuck in that fight or flight mode. And it doesn't work. Another thing that is really huge for career and causes of burnout is overexposure to trauma. It's been said a lot. I heard it once on a different podcast. One of our guests, CJ Dickinson, talked about it. CJ was on episode 61 for us. We talked about this at a pretty decent length. And the average human, non public safety or medical field related person sees, I believe it's between 5 and 7, experiences 5 and 7 traumatic things, throughout their life. That could be the loss of a loved one, loss of a job. But talking about deep traumatic stuff, seeing things like dismemberment, the average Joe isn't seeing this kind of stuff, guys. And this is where it gets really, really scary. So we have to understand that we have overexposure to trauma. So that between, we'll say 5 and 10, just to be safe for the sake of numbers, exposures for a normal human, you could see that tenfold on your shift, depending on what you have, where you work. If you work in a bigger city, you can see shootings and stabbings, murders, fatal fires, car accidents, dismemberments, everything in one simple 24 or 48-hour shift. Now, you multiply that across the length of your career, 20 or 30 years. If you make it that long, that's a lot. So we got to make sure that we're doing things to be cognizant of that. And right now, this episode of Ask Yourself is more to discuss, when are we going to accept that, the medical field is part of the fire service field? And in order to kind of help me through that and really grasp that concept, I'm reminded when I got my EMT back in 2018, there was a young kid. I'll never forget it. His name was Josh. He was a young firefighter in our department, and I was going through my EMT school. And Josh loved the med field. He was also in the fire side, but he loved the med field. So much love the med field that he, when it came to doing his continuing ed, decided that he didn't need to take con ed classes. He actually retested with the NREMT every year. He went down to a training facility, took the crazy exam that they have, and stayed registered that way. And for anybody that's ever done that, the NREMT is a very tricky question base. They are, and forgive me, I'm forgetting what they're called. And I know my fellow deputy who's listening to this right now is yelling at the top of his lungs, JP, it's called this. Adaptive. That's the phrase, I believe. I think I'm hearing you right. Adaptive, questions. And they can be a pain in the backside. For me, they are, because I take things very critical. I read a question, then I look at the next one. I'm like, oh, I take each new question like a new day. I'm like Dory. But Josh said to me one day, he said, JP, you got to remember, dude, helping people's helping people. And this came from a conversation where he's asking how I was doing. And I told him, man, I'm getting it. But I was very resistant to my, having to take it, having to get my EMT. In the state of New Hampshire, it is required that you have your EMT in order to become a full-time firefighter. So here I am. Our agency is one of the few that don't have the fire and EMS combined within one agency. So it was, to me, it just felt like a little extra that didn't need to be done, but I did it anyway because of, it's required. And after that conversation with Josh, he really just said to me, JP, helping people's helping people. And I think that's what we all need to understand, whether we are going out for a structure fire or a heart attack, a alarm activation or a fall injury. We're helping people. That is our job. That is the number one reason why we all listed to want to join and get into the service, is to help people. So the question is, why are we complaining about it? So ask yourself, are you complaining about it because you're experiencing burnout? And if that's the case, what are you doing to help yourself with that burnout? This is going to be our last episode for the month of June. And the month of June is the PTSD and Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Two very, very important things that should be on everybody's forefront as far as when it comes to, making sure where we need to be. There's a special article coming out on my Substack that's going to discuss some of the more deep stats as far as men's mental health, where we sit and where we need to finally accept that not being okay is okay. Might have said that wrong. We need to accept that it is okay to not be okay. I'm going to say that again. It's okay to not be okay. What it's not okay is to let it go, to let it sit, to bury it, to not talk about it. Because that's when you have cumulative mental trauma. And sort of like carpal tunnel, guys, it's just going to keep getting worse. It never gets better. You have to find a way to empty that bucket. So those are some of the causes of the burnout, right? Overexposure to traumas, chronic sleep loss and fatigue based on just crappy shifts. And I recall talking to somebody one time about how, it burns, a lot of people get burned out because the new guys, when you join a firehouse, get stuck on the ambulance. There's no way to shift off that ambulance. And yes, in hindsight, it's like, hey, I'm going to put my time in, I'm going to cut my teeth on the ambulance, earn my time, prove myself, and I'll get moved onto the engine or the ladder. But what does that do for the young guys? If you have a department that's kind of top heavy in the old regime, they're going to get stuck on that bus. 3.5 to 5 years is their career expectancy because we're burning them out. So to administrators, figure it out. Find a way to rotate people. Find a way to make it fun, right? I understand that there's some crappy medical calls. I thankfully do not have to deal with a lot of them myself, but there are frequent flyers. I myself, going through a kidney stone problem, have become a frequent flyer for our local ambulance. But I know that it's a burden. I know, yes, I'm experiencing a true emergency and that nothing I can do but go in the ambulance. But there are some that do, in my opinion, take advantage of the system. A slip, trip, and fall. Things that could be constituted as non-emergent calls. So I ask yourself and ask myself, what about the concept of triaging calls? You figure at the hospital and the ER, when you walk in, you get triaged. Generally speaking, if you go in on an ambulance, you get rolled right into a room. But if you walk in the lobby, you get triaged and you're accepted in the level, or based on the level of where they feel you are in the need for acute care. Why don't we do that with our EMS? Is it because we're afraid of, falsely triaging things? We do have 911. They give us the determinants, the alphas, the bravos, They are not necessarily always correct. So there is a flaw in the system there. But what if we started staffing, like we do paramedic chase vehicles, a triage vehicle? We get a call from 911 that gets classified as an Omega, a call that really shouldn't be given anything. It's a service call. We all know how JP feels about service calls on the fire side. What if we went to a business model that brought a chase vehicle in where they go and they triage it? What's the biggest downfall to that? Well, it's obvious. What if something doesn't get triaged correctly at the 911 level? And now you have a triage field tech going in and seeing Mr. or Mrs. Smith laying on the floor in a cardiac event. We've delayed service. But we also have to understand that some of these calls, the abuse of our services, have happened because we have statistically and wholly in the fire service allowed it to happen. There needs to be a moment in time when we stop doing that. We just need to figure out when that's going to be. Another thing we need to figure out is our staffing levels. We're understaffed, we're overworked, and truthfully, we have low pay and low respect. So if we can't get those things figured out, guys, we need to do it. Very short episode today, guys. Just wanted to hop on and do a quick ask yourself. 16 minutes, get you on your day. But as a reminder, be nice. Remember your whys, why you joined the fire service, why you're here. It doesn't really matter whether it's a med call or a fire call. Our job is to help people. Thanks for spending time with us on the Passionate Leader podcast. If something today hit home, don't sit on it, share it. Follow the Passionate Leader across all platforms and pull up a chair every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TikTok Live, where leadership meets the kitchen table and real talk drives real change. If you want deeper conversations and first access to exclusive offers, join us on Discord and step into the inner circle. Be the kind of leader someone else is praying for, and no matter what comes your way, remember this: lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we meet again, stay safe.
We're the passionate